Gepner's in front of the camera.
So welcome. Yeah, there are people in the back of the room who are misbehaving.
I see that.
Good. How are you?
What's up, Bruce?
Yeah.
Meryl, it's good to see
Hey,
you.
Larry.
Good to see you, Bruce. Shelley, do you think Gail Carlitz is going to join us tonight?
Just gonna try to do it on Zoom.
Scary.
What's up, Gail?
Was that because I walked by?
Oh, it's up there.
Okay.
What's up?
Okay.
How are
So
you?
welcome everybody.
Did
If you could find a seat, is this on, Mike? Is this on?
I think we should all mute now.
He says it's on. Okay, so I don't have to talk into it, right? I have to talk into it. Okay. Right. Welcome. Though this is not a part of our agenda today, I want to stop for a moment and simply say that for those of you who were friends with congregants of Mark Golub, this is a sad and challenging day. And so I just want you to know that we're glad you're here. We're glad you're here at Sinai and we're glad you're here tonight. A couple of kind of set induction ground rules. You'll notice that Rabbi Jay is sitting in the back corner. He's not a participant. We don't get to ask questions. His plan for this time was that we would do a lot of thinking and he would do note taking. And so he's not going to answer you if you say, but Rabbi. And also as part of that, these sessions are being recorded so that he can go back and look at them. So don't say anything you don't want on a recording. I want to really thank you all for being here and for your commitment to the synagogue. I want to start by suggesting to you that by repeating to you a conversation that Rabbi and I had this afternoon, who knows, which is about the space that we are in. This is a space that when we are in it, we are used to being passive. As would be the sanctuary if we were there. It was a space where we are used to being passive. And that actually immediately raises for us some of the questions that the book raises for us. And that our time together will raise for us. The idea that Judaism, as we practice it today, is given to us and we are receivers as opposed to co-creators. And so in our time together, let's not be trapped by these accoutrements and the fact that I am standing in front of you rather than us all in a more conversational kind of group. And Mike says I have to set ground rules. So ground rules. We have to listen to each other's ideas. We have to respect each other's ideas. There will be homework. There will be homework for every session except maybe the last one. It's important that if you have something to say and somebody else has just said it, you don't actually probably have to say it again. You could just say ditto or amen, and we'll all know what you meant. The goal of our time together is to imagine the Temple Sinai of the future. It is not to say that there's anything wrong with the Temple Sinai of the present. But that simply to understand that as congregants, as co-owners of the experience of being here, part of our job is to think about what we want and what is good for us and what is good for the next generation and the generation after that. And so not this session, but next session, one of the things we'll talk about is who millennials are and what they're looking for. There aren't many millennials in this room. And so one of the things we have to do is understand. Thank you. And maybe you should turn your phones off. Arlene just immediately pulled hers out. So no right and wrong answers. Listen deeply. Think about whether or not what you're hearing is useful or helpful, not about whether or not it fits me, but whether or not it could fit the Temple Sinai of today and the future. And I think that's a real important question for us to think about. Obviously, for most of us, the Temple Sinai of today fits. It's just not clear when we think about the future whether or not what we do now is exactly what we should be doing. So I hope that you were all able to listen to the podcast. There is also a briefer version that's not as in less depth. But I hope you were able to listen to the podcast. And so let me ask you about the three options. What did you learn? Option 1, option 2, option 3. Can somebody describe option 1 for me? Forget it. Right. It's actually, it's a step maybe beyond forget it. It is can we stretch that? Status quo. Whatever we used to do is what we should be doing. Right? It is that we tried that and it didn't work. That's a variation on that. What other variations on status quo do we hear? Don't ask questions. That's a lovely one. Yes, Jane. We do it because we do it. Right. There's nothing wrong. And in fact, one of the things that's striking about Temple Sinai, as opposed to lots of other congregations in Reform congregations and conservative congregations in the United States today, is there's nothing wrong here. There are lots of congregations that are in pre-folding. We are not in pre-folding. But there's nothing wrong doesn't mean we shouldn't be adapting. Go ahead, continue, David. There's nothing wrong depending on what demographic you're in. Also, there's nothing wrong on depending on what your goals are. Okay, great. Tamara. We have to honor tradition, and that means change is bad. Great. Any other ideas of what option 1 looks like? We do it because we are afraid, because we don't know what change looks like, because change is transgressive. Isn't that a great word? It is a transgression, and anything I do that is transgressive is de facto bad, wrong. Great. So tell me about. I told you not to talk. I'll get there. Yes, in Darwin, option 1 is die. Yep. Yep, for sure. Thank you. Okay, go ahead, Karen. No, it was option 3. So a friend has been talking to me about the space of Reform Judaism today, and he makes the analogy to unions, that unions developed because people didn't have rights, and then when people had rights, they didn't want unions. And so that unions were option 1, option 3, and they have become option 1. And as we need unions again, they are a radical notion. They're now option 3 again. Right. I'm sorry, Micah. I will start doing that. I promise. Okay. So option 2. What is option 2? What does option 2 look like? Disengagement. Thank you, Terry. It is the option 2 is I can't face this. You guys deal with this. And it's really, these are people who put themselves on hold. One of the things that Rabbi Lappy tells us is that they come back. I don't know that she has any data on any of this. Okay. Like I have seen no data on this. I like the way she thinks. So that's why you had to listen to it. So it's the pause. Go ahead, Gary. Right. That is one way that she means coming back. She also means coming back that that the option 3 people create something. I'm sorry, I didn't repeat this. Gary said, suggested that option 2 is also the people who go through the ritual events and then pause and come back when they need those ritual events for another generation. And Rabbi Lappy would also suggest to us that that some option 2ers are people who wait to see what craziness option 3 comes up with, and then they decide either I'm in or I'm out. Right. Go ahead, Dennis. Right, right. And it's not just about Judaism, it's about any kind of, right, right. Darwin. Right, right. No, she's not doing research on this. She is doing critical thinking about the way human beings operate. That people move from 2 to 3, not from 1 to 3. But we don't, I don't know. I don't know. And that kind of cynicism should be something that we bring into our discussion of her work, for sure. Jane. So Jane's suggesting that what we see in option 2 is really what Gary is suggesting as well, that people leave because they've received what they perceive that they can receive, and they come back to give that exact same material now 20 years later to their children. And I think inherent in that statement, Jane, is a condemnation of the relevance of Judaism, because we're not saying to ourselves then, is this a Jewish choice? Is this a moral choice? How is my behavior informed by Jewish practice, or even what I know about Jewish practice, which may not be a lot. And so I think there's a real, you're accepting something, you're both accepting something as a given that I think we have to actually look under that rock a little bit. Go ahead, Amy, and then Tamara, and then Beth. They may simply be leaving their home synagogue, and they may be finding other places to affiliate and connect. And the question is, have we given them things that they carry with them, not about their home synagogue per se, but about Judaism writ large? Tamara, and then Beth, and then we're going to go to 3. Amy, that's Amy.
grab them in a little bit of a more passive way themselves, not necessarily just to give to the next generation of their own children in a self-serving way, but that whatever they were doing before, their life was changing because they were growing in a
Right.
different space. And so now they just needed to adjust, and maybe they were waiting for, rather than taking the initiative, they were waiting for something to come out and grab them.
Right. Tamara's suggesting that this is a more passive leaving, and that they were kind of maybe exploring, maybe looking for something to grab them. Just an interesting aside, she spends 5 or 8, I can't remember which, years in Japan as a practicing Buddhist, and then has a Jewish epiphany, and goes to rab school. So she drifts and then she returns. And I think part of the question is, for me, is there a Jewish influence in the drifting? Does her Judaism go with her as she drifts? I don't have an answer to that. Go ahead, Beth.
A question came up when something talking about people leaving,
Uh-huh.
coming back with their kids.
Uh-huh.
Do we bring back number 1? Because when we come back, there's often this, I haven't been doing this for a long time, why ditching?
Yeah.
You know
So
what I mean? So when you are when you're re-entering, do you re-enter as a 1? Or as as an open, I'm here and I'm sure this changed, or how come we don't see that sometimes?
So the question is, do we re-enter as option 1 people, option 2 people, or option 3 people? And of course, the answer is all of the above. And, I think the parents who say to their kids, I hated Sunday school, and so you should hate Sunday school, those are really good option 1 people. But I think, I would guess that the music is an issue for people who come back, and the music is radically different. But I think the sense of connection is actually probably more important, and particularly more important now. Yes, and now in this phase of COVID, I think connection is really critically important. Alan, and then go ahead, and then I'm gonna go.
I know you want to. My only thought is that I think we're being too soft in discussing option 2. I think there's a lot of rejection. I think there's a lot of cultural, but there's things that go on that push people away, and they're not.
And they're not going to come back, right?
Because,
and it's
I think it's not just sort of the drifting and drifting back. I think there's real issues that people perceive.
So in my kishkas, I think that Alan is suggesting that people don't drift softly, but some people drift, really reject. In my kishkas, I think that there are people who leave because they want to leave and they have to find something to hang it on, right? I'm done with this. I don't like this. I don't want this. Now I hate the rabbi, because that's an easy thing to hang it on. And I think that there are people who find that some of the rules and restrictions are really painful for them. And in fact, I think that's what liberal Judaism comes out of. Liberal Judaism is an option 3 to traditional Judaism. Can I skip you?
I just want
Go.
to clarify. I didn't mean that they were rejecting Judaism. They were rejecting the belonging to a place. They may still practice their Judaism, but not want to belong.
Jane wants us to parse rejecting Judaism with rejecting the locale of Judaism. And I'm going to suggest to you that, that if we do the work well, the Judaism's kind of in their bloodstream, and they can reject the space, and they can reject the behaviors. Hold this thought for just a second, okay? The third option is option 3. Give me, what is option 3? Option 3 is where women in the rabbinate come from. It is where Reform Judaism comes from. It actually goes back as far as the Second Temple, when we are expelled from Judaism and rabbinic Judaism begins. But in many ways, we're still stuck in rabbinic Judaism. So we're looking at the year 70. There's radical change that happens then. But the question for us, I think, around option 3 is, can we do it in an intentional way? When we think about change, is our change intentional or is our change reactive? Are we changing towards or are we changing from? And I think that's a real, that is a question that is stirred up by everything, all the people who think about option 1 and option 2. Are we changing to or are we changing from? So and one of the things I think that's important about option 3 people is they are thinking about change before change is needed. They're already planning. So this is the equivalent of people are coming over for dinner in 3 days before I'm making a menu, right? Go ahead, Dennis.
Are they thinking about it, or is it an opportunity or an option comes up available to them, and then all of a sudden they say, oh my God, that's interesting to me. As opposed to I think both is it, but I think the predominant part of it really is the people that say, until you actually create something, they have no idea what they would want to do. And I think.
Right,
So it's very few people that are really the leaders that create the next option 3.
So what's interesting to me, Dennis is suggesting that very few people are the creators of option 3, and Lappe would say 10%. Again, how does she know? What we are seeing now in the reform movement, I really can't speak to the conservative movement. I just don't know it as well. But what we're seeing in the reform movement is lots of spaces and places where people are already doing alternative membership, not membership, synagogue membership models, but membership models. So, where the whole thing happens in the rabbi's home. And that's a really powerful alternative membership type. So that instead of the building, the congregation, which wouldn't call itself a congregation, is a gathering, is a group. How what? Chabad is a wonderful model of option 3. And one of the things about Chabad is that you don't have to pay for it and you don't have to believe anything. Everybody's welcome.
But you have to follow all their rules.
No, you don't. They will encourage you to follow rules. But Karen, if you walk in there and say, I have had a cheeseburger in the car, they'll say, I'm so glad you're here. No, you can't go to this. Yeah, yes. Ritual rules.
Yeah.
But they don't care. But if you don't go to ritual events, they don't care. They want you there emotionally in whatever way. And they're everywhere. So those are our 3 options. As at the same time, I think it is really important for us to understand. Robin, you look confused. No. Okay. At the same time, I think it's really important for us to understand that all of those options arise out of something which in my field we would call a master story, a kind of a basic story that I tell about myself and about my relationships and about Judaism. There's a master story. So in fact, the master story of liberal Judaism starts in the 1800s. It also starts in the Torah. Master stories have this funny thing where they both get fixed and they adapt. So I rewrite the story of my life and of my affiliations based on experiences. So I could have, my master story could be, this is a totally stupid example of a master story. My sisters are 5'8" and 5'9". I grew up thinking I was short. I am not short. I'm the height of an average American woman. I am not short. My master story was that I was short. And when I got to college and I could reach things, which I couldn't do in my family growing up, I had to reevaluate that master story. Now, that is a totally unimportant master story, but it is a story that I tell myself about myself, which is fixed. And then I have to work with it to change it when there's information that comes in that's contrary to it. What's a master story we tell ourselves about Temple Sinai? And you can't say warm and welcoming because every congregation everywhere tells themselves that master story. What's a master story we tell ourselves about Temple Sinai? Go ahead, Terry.
A lot more people show up for the high holidays than any Shabbat service.
A lot more people show up for high holidays than Shabbat service. That's a master story. And if, for example, on Shabbat Shira, we had a whole bunch of people, we would either have to relook at that master story, option 3, or reject the facts, or just ignore it. Great. Other master stories, Jane.
Every family event we've had, where my family is tied here, right? So there are memories here.
Okay. So the master story of your family is, this is a place where memories happen.
And there are many families we know who are here because maybe not even present, but because of the history.
Okay, and history matters. That's part of a master story. And what do you do with that master story with somebody who walks in the door? If we say history matters, then somebody who walks in the door for the first time, it's the beginning of their history if they're embraced.
Right.
If they're embraced, absolutely. And that embrace is also part of our master story. I'm not sure that we actually do it as much as we tell ourselves we do it. Great. Any other master stories? I can come up with bunches for you. Go ahead, Tamara.
My impression is we look to the future.
We look to the future. That is a master story. And it allows for something like this. If the master story was tradition matters, we wouldn't be here. Beautiful. Go ahead, Lisa, and then Robin.
We make Judaism accessible.
We make Judaism accessible. So that could mean we make it easy and not, and we don't ask very much of you, or it could mean we're embracing, and we'd have to figure out which of those it meant. Great. Robin.
This community is more supportive of each other than most communities out there.
Okay, so now Robin's given us a master story. This community is more supportive of itself and each other than most communities. And that's now a master story that's based on the rejection of other stories, right? So we actually need them to screw it up so that we can feel good about ourselves. Pardon?
I said, let's do it.
Other master stories. There's a master story that centers worship. When you think about the amount of space we have in our buildings that are dedicated to worship and education, those are centering parts of the master story. Go ahead, David, and then Susan. And Arlene, did you have your hand up? Okay.
Growth happens here.
Growth happens here. That's our 3-word master story. And so what do we do? It does connect all. We hope it connects all the dots. Great. Susan, and then Arlene, and then Diane.
I would say in terms of ritual, we have evolved and we are continuing to evolve.
Okay. So evolution, growth, we're back to Darwin again, is happening here. And I'm not sure that we're speaking to, and some people will be uncomfortable and other people will be thrilled. But there is a sense that growth is acceptable, for sure. Arlene.
Pretty much what Sue said. We're open to new ways of worship.
New ways of worship. Okay.
Or altered from.
So ritual can change. Ritual can change. There is implicit in what a number of you have said that ritual is important. And I'm not sure that we've actually said that's part of our master story, but you're implying that by raising it. I also raised it. So, and that's a question, because every master story comes with assumptions. Diane, and then Wind, and then I'm going to keep going. Oh, I have lots of time. I can stop freaking out.
This is too much like the last comment, but it seems to me as my rather new self that there are a number, the congregation supplies a number of different ways to feel like you're close to God. like
Oh.
different options of how to reach God. Not
So-
just sitting in the sanctuary on Friday, but Saturday morning.
So Diane is raising God as part of a master story, which, and the congregation as a conduit to God, as a place where you can have multiple access points to God. Notice that nobody else had mentioned God as a player in this story. And I think that's a really, so what you've just done is you've expanded our master story to include God. God wasn't present before. And I think in lots of institutional spaces, and now I'm thinking beyond synagogues, but Jewish institutional spaces, God and tradition can be used as a cudgel rather than as a gift. Wonderful. Wind and then Nan. And then Michelle. I'm doing so well at names.
Temple Sinai has lots of different ways of connecting with community. We're able to connect and find a place for us to be with others that's relevant and meaningful. to us.
So Wind is raising connection as part of the master story. That when I walk in the room, I am known and I know other people. And I would argue vociferously that at this point in our history, connection may be the most salient and important variable, because in this stage of COVID, we've lost so many social skills, and we're struggling with big social decisions, like, do I actually like other people?
The creation of circles was such an inventive
Yes.
move in making a place for people to connect in all kinds of ways.
So circles are clearly option 3. Clearly option 3. No question. Nan, did you have a?
I think that there are a lot of people here who would be here despite changes in clergy, professional staff. They're just here because they want to be here. And the leadership in that way doesn't matter. I should say it doesn't matter. That's it. But
No, maybe it doesn't.
it doesn't matter, or it's not the most important thing. They're still going to be here.
Right. So Nan is taking me towards something that somebody else, I said, Jane, wait, I'm going to get there. So I'm going to let Michelle talk, and then I want to respond to both of you. Go ahead.
I think we have an assumption, or part of our story is that we share social values and value social action, for example, and social justice. I think we sort of have that. And then as a sub point to that, I think we, as a community, or inclusivity is an important part of our story.
Yeah.
Okay, so Michelle is raising inclusivity and social action. Not social action and social values are different.
Well, I think they both fall under social values. I think we have not entirely shared, but many of us share social values, and as part of that, I think social
Right.
action and inclusivity are.
Right. So I would suggest to you and that social values are I care about this, and social action is I do about this. This is a total tangent. There is research on the impact of the positive impacts that trauma can have. And one of the things that we see in post-traumatic growth is increases in kindness, compassion, and altruism, and they're actually all different. Compassion doesn't require that I do anything. So, I see a homeless person on the street and I say, that's terrible, and I keep walking. Kindness is I see a homeless person on the street and I take a granola bar out of my bag and give it to them, but I can do that in a completely non-compassionate way. And altruism is I see a homeless person on the street and I get involved in poverty work. But again, I don't have to be compassionate and I don't have to be kind. And what you're suggesting is that we do compassion and some of us do kind. Does that work? compassion is the big thing, kind is the direct service type stuff.
Sure.
Okay. Maybe. You'll argue with me later. Karen, go ahead.
I think that the organization cares that we succeed, that we, when we come here, or we're part of this, or as part of the organization, that we have a place, and they work hard at it. And lots of places that don't work, you know, in any capacity, that's a big reason, is that they just talk about it, but they don't do it.
Okay, so Karen is suggesting for us that it's in the action of making people feel belonging. That really, that's what the secret sauce. Okay. Anything else? Go ahead. Dan and then Sue. No, it's not Dan.
Aaron.
I finally lost it.
So in the whole context of, evolving part of being temple and being Jewish, a lot of what we do here has nothing to do with being Jewish. It's the interfaith, the interfaith marriages and, just being community.
So Aaron is suggesting that what we do here may or may not have to do with actually being Jewish. There is, when we think about the beginnings of particularly the reform movement in the United States, much more so than in Europe, the reform movement began in the United States and had a huge social action component to it. One of the interesting aspects of that, as we look towards the future, is that social action component is now part of the American Jewish culture and a part of American culture. It's no longer something that we own. It's not our bailiwick anymore. It used to really be ours. And so what does it mean to be people who are engaged in social action? Does it have anything to do with being Jewish? Historically, it had a lot to do with being a Reform Jew. At this point, I think most of our kids are getting all sorts of secular messages about participating in the world, and the impact of privilege and the responsibilities of privilege, which may diminish the importance of their Jewish identity as opposed to their identity, which is okay, I'm gonna get arguments here. Stu, go ahead.
Rabbi promotes both of them.
More people or personal growth? Both. So part of the rabbis, I'm not going to say job. Mission is to grow the synagogue and to grow the individuals in the synagogue. Lovely, lovely. Okay, Diane, and then Carolyn, and then Judy.
Okay, I don't take issue with that any synagogue is not really fueled by Judaism, by the beliefs. I mean, Tikkun Olam is the center, right? So whatever, well, I guess that's right.
Yeah, I mean, that's an assumption. Diane is saying Tikkun Olam is the center. I'm not sure that it was the center. I'm sure it was not the center for our ancestors who lived in shtetls.
True. True. But I mean, I'm talking today. I mean, a lot of what I see when I read, the website, whatever, it has to do with helping others and being active in the community, and that may not be to me.
That's part of our master story. That's part of our master story, and it may not make us unique in the outside world, but it is part of our master story, and that's really what I wanted to get at here. Yes, for sure, Carolyn.
Oh, I just wanted to say that I do kind of disagree with you about the Judaism and activism part.
Go ahead.
Well, my personal experience, one of the reasons that I wanted to be friends with Jews and sought out company of Jews, was because I heard that they discussed ethics. When I grew up in the South, I left because of the racist violence, and it was a sickening experience. And especially in the church, that I was very serious about. So I'm not saying anything against Christianity, which is what I grew up in, but the reason I was drawn to Judaism was, I didn't know the word then, but you know.
That makes tons of sense to me. And what I wonder is whether or not it is, the position I'm taking is that it is much less unique than it was when you were drawn to Judaism.
Are you calling me old?
I'm calling you wise. Judy and then Judy and then Jane. She has gray hair.
And I'm lost. I think our community offers many different ways and levels to contribute and also opportunities for learning. Constantly things that you can involve yourself in, learning experience.
So Judy is adding to our master's story, which has now gotten very long. And she's adding that there's opportunities to learn. And I think that some of those opportunities to learn are other directed and some of them are I directed. And that they both exist. Absolutely. Go ahead, Jane.
One of the things that, I don't know where it fits in the master story, but it does fit in the concept of social activism. One of the things I worry about in talking to 20-somethings and 30-somethings, I seem to be steeped in, given the age of my children, is that there are a lot of Jewish people, maybe in the middle stage of that age, who are wonderful, who are very active, and who are indifferent to Judaism. They don't see any connection to Judaism as essential. And so I think that one of the risks in making core, potentially forgetting God, making core just social activism is you may be inspiring a generation of wonderful people, but maybe not a generation of Jews who feel connected to Judaism in some way that is different than being connected to other social movements. And that's at least something that I think about because I hear it sometimes when I'm with us at a group.
And that's the point I'm trying to make, that our young adults and our adolescents see social activism as a responsibility of a citizen, but not necessarily the responsibility of a Jew or a connection to Judaism. And that's not to say they all feel that way, but some. Okay. All right. So pause this line of thinking for just a minute, because I want to talk about levels of connection and identity. So I'm going to describe 4 levels of identity, and hopefully they'll make sense. The first level of, and these are Jewish identity ideas. First level of Jewish identity actually is one that doesn't require membership at all. It is, I like bagels, I read Jewish books, I go to my mom's or dad's or somebody's for Seder. It would not occur to me to do anything else that's Jewish, and it would not occur to me to think of myself as anything but a Jew. That's identity at its core. It is, I carry this with me. You can have that in here. It's okay. I carry this with me. I'd rather have a bagel I'd rather have a knish than a dumpling. I'd really rather have a dumpling than a knish. And it is I know I'm Jewish, period. One of the things we know about identity is at core is identity is fluid. So my identity is different when I'm in different places. It's different when I'm under different kinds of pressures. Your identity when you are, there's an old psychological test that one of the things they want to know is whether or not you're lying in your answers. And one of the questions they ask you is, are your table manners the same when you're eating by yourself or with other people? That's, if you answer yes to that, we assume you're lying, right? And it's that kind of, you know, I do Jewish, but I'm not in a meaningful way. Right. And so I when I'm by myself, I'm Jewish. When I'm in public, I'm Jewish. That's the part where my table manners are the same. I experience myself as being Jewish, but I haven't got the faintest idea what that means in practical terms. That's identity. And so I may wear Jewish jewelry and I may read Jewish books, but I may also be in situations where it would never occur to me to say to somebody, yeah, and I'm Jewish. Okay. That's identity. The second level is what Pew cares about, the Pew study cares about, and that's affiliation. They care about membership, whether it's membership in a JCC or membership in a synagogue or giving to a federation. What Pew measures when they talk about Jewish affiliation is membership, period. And what continually bothers me about this is it seems to me that Pew is focused on what is truly transactional. I pay for this and I receive something. The transactional affiliation is transactional. When my relationship with the organization or the people is transactional, then I am there until it no longer serves me, and then I leave because I've gotten what I wanted. So my relationship with the people who change the oil in my car is completely transactional. My relationship with the JCC when our children were little was completely transactional. And when they no longer wanted to go, we dropped the membership because we were only there because it served us. If the Italian Center's health club is better than the JCC's, you go to the Italian Center, that's transactional, that's affiliation. And that's what Pew is interested in. So that all the stuff that we get about Jewish affiliation is about membership. It's really, do I pay for things? And my fear is that is transactional. For most of us here who have spent time in this space, so that is I leave after bar mitzvah, right? That's purely transactional, I got the service I needed. I come back because I need the rabbi to marry my kids or bury my parents. And I may have to join for that, but it's transactional. What I get paid for something and I receive something. The next level of relationship between a place and a person is connection. And my assumption is that most of us feel that. Connection is, I'm known here, people care about me here. I can call people here if I need something. I am obligated to other people who are here. And connection's the thing, of course, that was most profoundly disrupted in early COVID and remains disrupted for many of us. I'm doing a program at a congregation in Westchester right now on aging, and half of the people are online. Why? Because it's at night and they're worried about resurgence. And so connection is disrupted. And rebuilding connection isn't as simple as simply saying we can be back and the connection is rebuilt. We have to relearn social skills. We have to figure out who we actually want to see, because they're the people you didn't talk to at all during COVID. And maybe that's meaningful. So that's the third level. The fourth level is aspirational, and it's temporary. And I think the fact that it's temporary is actually really important for us as we think about the creating move our next steps of creating ourselves going forward. And the way it's aspirational is these are the moments where I feel really profoundly connected. But they don't last because nothing profound lasts. So this, I'll give you an example for me. I want you to think about what would be an example for you. At our oldest daughter's bat mitzvah, I was lucky enough to be told that I didn't have to write everything out. And I spoke to her spontaneously. And I remember feeling like she and I were in a cone of light. It was profound. I will tell you, I rarely feel that way. And if I said to myself, every time I go to the synagogue, I want to have those deep connections, I would stop coming. But those deep connections are important moments for us in solidifying the level that is called connection. So questions for me: identity, affiliation, connection, and deep engagement. Go.
One thing that comes to mind, like my older daughter is married to a non-Jew. She's an agnostic and she calls herself a cultural Jew. And that's, I think, a lot of our children. I don't want to make an assumption, but a lot of young Jewish adults that I know fall into that category.
Absolutely. They are, that is Jewish identity. And I'm not sure that it's terribly profound. I'm not sure that the experience of it is terribly profound. And it doesn't require any knowledge. It doesn't require any action.
But the brilliance, I think, of Judaism is that certain holidays can take place outside of a place of worship, which someone that's agnostic doesn't feel a connection to a place, but they are fine going to a Passover Seder. And so I just throw that out there.
Yeah, so Terry's reminding us that you don't have to do it in your home. Judaism is not something that you have to do in your home. You can do it in mom's home. It's also not something you have to do in a Jewish institution. And one of the things that we're seeing, particularly with millennials, is an increasing disinterest in institutional Judaism because they're transactional. And what am I getting for it? Great. Anybody else? Go ahead, Tamara.
I'm not sure that it's the failings of the millennials, and just to try to kind of.
I'm not blaming the millennials.
The master story, what you were just talking about with identity, I think part of our master story that I think we want to believe is that we're creating this incredible intergenerational space and agency and opportunities for everyone. But I find it kind of disturbing in a sense that there are no millennials sitting in this room. If we're here talking about the future of the synagogue, and next time we meet, we're going to talk about what millennials want, but there are no millennials here to have their voices heard. I would hope that, you know, between now and the next time we meet, there's a real effort to bring a bunch. I'd rather sit here and listen to millennials than just all make pronouncements about why we think our children aren't involved.
Right.
I think it's that they're maybe in the phase two, the option 2 phase, where my children have a deep Jewish education. They went to Jewish day school. They do identify themselves as Jews, and they're not getting what they need from the synagogue, but they want to be in a Jewish space, but they just define a Jewish space as differently
Absolutely.
than I do, sitting in a synagogue.
Which is what I was talking about earlier about, so for example, the rabbi's home-based Judaism, or other kinds of things that we're seeing. There's an organization that's called Moishe House, which is a place for Jewish adults to live together. They don't have to do Jewish. They just have to live together. There's an organization called One Table, which pays for people to have Friday night dinners, but does not demand that you do any Shabbat ritual. But it says their goal is, it's Friday night, you should eat dinner with other Jews. Is that the tip of the iceberg? Is it the beginning of something, or is it all they want? And what else could we, how else could we be so that the space is more welcoming? Oh, look at this. Great. No, Aaron first.
So I think every generation has their millennial identity. So like for Generation Xers, right? We were at that point before we had our families,
Right.
where you're in between, you're young adults, you're just getting married, you don't have kids yet. And then when you finally do have kids, young kids, you don't have time to be at a place like this right now.
Right.
You're putting kids to bed.
Right.
And financially, probably can't afford it, you know, being part of the temple right now.
Right.
And so those millennials will turn into the next generation when they start having kids. And those kids go to Hebrew school, and then they'll be asking, what are the generation after millennials? Generation Z's.
Yes. So what we, in fact, one of the remarkable upsides of an early childhood center is that it's an on-ramp in which we can engage people without demanding affiliation, so that we can be building identity and connection without saying pony up. Thank you, Phyllis, although she's not there. Okay, Jane.
What you were talking about, the dinners and everything else, isn't that what Chabad really does well? Mariachi Darren has every age group come to her house on Friday nights for dinner. You don't have to be Jewish, it's right there.
This is what Chabad has always done well. It's what Chabad has always done well. Then they don't demand affiliation. Who was that? Erica, go ahead.
Hi, millennial here. Look, I think there's such a larger conversation of the engagement, and I'm engaged in these kinds of conversations with my cohort, and this, what I'm staring at, doesn't work for us. We're looking for, or a lot of millennials are looking for snippets and pieces and things with their families. Even me as a temple staff member, this is not the best time of night for this type of a platform if you're looking to engage millennials. I'm here, I have a stake, it's a little bit different, but I think it's a hard group, and you may not get them right now, but I don't think it means we won't get them. And I think that's the bigger picture of finding those touch points. And I don't know that they know that we need them in the way that we need them, or that you need us in the way that you need us, unless they're already entrenched and engaged in some of the ways that the few of us are.
Right. Thank you. Yes. So the question of outreach is a really, and she left.
She's there.
Erica, I loved it that you just said that and disappeared.
Mostly because my child's singing in the background.
That we have to be thinking about. The issue with every generation is not what we have to offer, but what you need. And we get trapped in, you should need what we have to offer because it worked for me. Who was that? Carl. And then I'm going to stop us from doing this and do something else with you.
I think there's a period of disconnectedness where these people don't feel part of the continuum. It's sort of, what are you going to give to me, as opposed to what am I going to give to perpetuate this in this kind of continuous journey.
Right. So it's funny, in some ways, there's almost it's not economic, but it's psychologically economic exchange. What am I getting? What am I giving? Do I feel cared for, cared about? And in what ways? Do we bring our grown children together here to be together with each other? Do we say, even the ones that don't live here? What do we do to create spaces in which you get to remember how powerful that moment was? Okay, so now I'm going to ask you to pause. I'm going to ask you to get out your cell phones. Get your cell phone out. And go to your mail setting. My email is Betsy, Betsy 951 @gmail.com. what I want to do now is I want to break you up into groups. And I'm going to ask you to take notes on your conversation and email them to me. Oh my God, this is a lot of emails. Bruce, I don't know if Phyllis has gone, but here's the question that I want to ask you to work on in groups, but don't move. Okay, the question I want to ask you is, when you joined Temple Sinai, for some of us, that's a long time ago. For some of us, that's more recent. What were you seeking? And when you say a synagogue, don't quit there. So what I'd like you to do is, with the people that you're talking to, I'd like you to actually work hard to keep peeling back that onion, so that if the answer is I was seeking education for my children, I want to know why. So that the response to every answer is why. Is that English? Okay. The way I'd like you to break yourself up is, I would like you to sit with somebody you don't live with and didn't drive with. Okay. And the reason for that is that I know that most of us in our personal relationships and our close relationships are incredibly efficient, which means we often don't listen to each other. So what I'd like you to do is to find somebody that you don't know all that well and ask the question. What was the question? When you joined Temple Sinai, what were you seeking? And there's a second question. Why? And there's a third question, which you may not get to, which is, what are you seeking now? Okay, questions? No bigger than 3 people. No bigger than 3 people. You have 10 minutes, but that is actually not very much time. So stand up, move around. You don't have to stay in this room. With the person you drove with or live with.
I hope they mute us.
Can they mute them? They need to be muted.
Yeah.
Who's looking for a partner? Raise your hand if you're looking for a partner.
Hey, Betsy Stone.
Who's doing the tech?
No, you can't. I haven't taken notes for you.
Betsy.
Introduce yourself.
I can text Sharon.
So Erica and Larry, are you in my breakout room?
It seems like it.
So somehow I can't get to a gallery view on this. Oh, here, I just found it. Okay, switch to gallery view. All right, so is it just the 3 of us and then?
And Leslie. Leslie, are you there?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah. Hi. Oh, now you're muted.
How about now?
Now you're back.
Okay.
Can you put your photo, can you be with us, or you're driving?
I'm in my car and I'm not good with technology.
That's probably for the better if you're in the car.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm stopped. I'm just in a parking lot.
Great. And we lost Larry, and I don't have a ton of time. I've got to get Parker upstairs, but I figured I'd give it a try.
So what are we supposed to be talking about?
What was your reason, I think, for joining? Like, what was your goal for joining? And then what are you looking for now?
Well, for me, honestly, this book.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll see you guys later.
Okay.
Somehow.
So how do we get back to the main
They
room?
should let us back in. They'll let us
Gail,
back in.
are you in our room?
Who said that?
That was
Moira.
Moira. I haven't seen you.
No, I think they're pushing us back into one group now.
Okay.
I'm going off video. Bye.
Coming back. Okay, anyway. Okay, so, let me tell you what we're gonna do from here on out. Because it is now 8:13, and not only do therapists start on time, but we end on time. And somebody has to tell me why my watch keeps talking to me. So anyway, this is what your homework is. Shut up. Your homework for tomorrow night, for next week, excuse me, is to own the book. That's the first part of your homework. There are actually 4 copies out on the table. Rabbi and I have no idea whose they are. And if you walk out with one of them, would you please let Shelley know so that you can pay us for it? Because we don't know where they came from. What we'd like you to do is to read the first 54 pages. That's a lot of reading for some of us, including the introduction. And what we're going to do next time is this. We're going to spend some time debriefing if the things that you just sent me or are about to send me. We're going to spend some time talking about power and how power operates in a world of social media. It's actually very different than in previous generations. We're going to spend some time talking about millennials and how they're different from all of us boomers, because most of us in here are boomers, a couple of Gen Xers. You have your own issues. And we're going to spend some time thinking about what the content is that meets our needs and the content that really stands in our way. So questions for me.
What was the last thing?
The content that meets our needs and the content that stands in our way. The homework you have is to read through page 54. 5-4. You can remember this.
Does that correspond to a chapter number?
If you have an ebook, go outside and just pick up the book, and it actually gets us through the first. It gets us through the first group of essays. There's a whole bunch of essays, and most of them are like bathroom reading. They're not very long. David, what is on page 54?
Page 54, the beginning of part 3 called renewing. Part 1 and 2.
Oh, shoot. As usual, I'm not sure that that's what I wanted you to do. No, I don't want you to do that.
See, aren't you glad I asked?
I'm sorry. I'm glad that I got the book. I want you to read through. I'm going to send you an email, but I think I want you to read through the end of part 1, which takes you to transformations. Okay, so that is. Oh, that's nothing. It's to page 20. Why are you complaining?
Introduction.
I want you to read the introduction. Introduction up to page 20. You'll get an email, I promise. And it will be. What? I'll send an email, and it will sound very confused, like I sound right now. Questions, comments, arguments, ideas? Yes, Scott.
Can you give us a little sense of the journey that we're going through? That's what is the end goal? Ideas on a whiteboard? Is it action for the temple? Is it acceptance? Is it diversity?
So, my agenda and Rabbi's agenda might be a little different. Okay. I think Rabbi is looking for guidance and creativity from us. I could be wrong. I'm looking for intellectual sparks. I'm looking for us to be thinking about things that we normally take for granted and accept. And so what would be a perfect outcome for me would be fires that have been lit. I don't know if fires that get lit. And he's not allowed to speak. So we're not going to ask him what his perfect outcome is. Do you want us to answer that?
Nope.
Okay. So I think the goal here is for each of us individually and for us as a community to think big thoughts about what the Judaism of the future of Temple Sinai can look like. That's nice and vague, isn't it?
It is.
Good.
Inspirational.
Yeah, it's aspirational, it's inspirational, and it's about fire. Yeah.
Just say we can't come to all sessions, are we still welcome to the sessions?
If you can't come to all sessions, would you be willing to watch the recording?
Afterwards.
Obviously afterwards, yes, yes. So that's part of the reason we're recording is so that people can catch up, so that you're not behind. And you can probably watch the recording at 1.5 speed and and that's how I listen to podcasts. They talk too slow. So, anything else? Well, thank you all for coming. I'm really honored that you.
Thanks, Betsy.
And I'll see you next week.
Thank you, Betsy.
Actually, no.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you all for attending.